The one man who could seriously threaten Tinubu before 2027, and he's already moving. Meet Emeka. He's 41 years old and he runs a small printing business in Nnewi, Anambra State, Nigeria. He has a generator because everybody in Nnewi has a generator. And every morning before the market opens, he fills it with petrol, 45 liters. He does the calculation in his head without thinking. It has become muscle memory. His WAEC result came in November 2023. His third child, a girl, passed with 5 credits. She wants to study medicine. Last month, Emeka went to visit the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, to ask about admission. The fees they quoted him, he drove home without saying much to anyone. Emeka is not on Twitter. He does not follow political commentary channels. But last week, at the shop where he buys petrol, somebody had a television on and he heard a voice he recognized, Peter Obi, talking about the cost of petrol, the cost of school fees, the cost of doing business in Nigeria. Talking about it the way Emeka thinks about it, as a practical problem that has a practical solution, if the right person is in charge. And Emeka found himself asking a question he had not asked since 2023, when he queued for 2 hours to vote for the first time in his adult life. Is this time different? Does Peter Obi, now on his third party in 3 years, with a new running mate and a new platform, actually have a real chance to beat Tinubu in January 2027? Or is the excitement of 2023 going to end the same way it did before? Before we go deeper, if you're just finding Niger News Watch, welcome. This channel exists to break down what's really happening in Nigerian politics without the noise and without the spin. If that's the kind of analysis you enjoy, hit subscribe and stay with me, because this story is about to get a lot more interesting. Let me bring you fully up to date, because if you have not been following this story closely, you may have missed just how much has happened in the last 3 months. On May 3rd, 2026, Peter Obi formally left the African Democratic Congress, his second party exit in 2 years, and walked into the Nigeria Democratic Congress, the NDC. He joined Rabiu Kwankwaso, the former Kano governor, who had also left the NNPP. The NDC, registered in February 2026, was a virtually unknown party just weeks before it suddenly became the most talked about opposition platform in Nigeria. On May 30th, 2026, exactly 27 days after joining the NDC, Peter Obi was formally declared the party's presidential candidate at a special convention held at Le Finesse Event Center in Abuja. He was unopposed. Seriake Dixon, the former Bayelsa governor and NDC national chairman, handed him the party flag. In his acceptance speech, Obi said, "No nation can thrive when citizens can no longer sleep with their eyes closed." He announced Kwankwaso as his running mate. Since then, Obi has been moving. A 2-hour interview on Sunday Politics on Channels Television on July 27th. A full campaign agenda release covering security, economy, healthcare, education, and power. A pledge to serve only 1 4-year term if elected. A specific outreach to northern Nigeria, promising on national television that he would prioritize unity, security, and economic development in the north. At the same time, the political landscape around him has continued to shift. Atiku Abubakar is the ADC presidential candidate, a third-party run for the man who has contested the presidency more times than any other living Nigerian. Seyi Makinde declared on the APM platform under his Reset Nigeria movement. The SDP fielded Adewale Adebayo. The opposition going into January 2027 is not unified. It is fragmented across at least 4 platforms. But here is what is different about this moment compared to 2023. Obi has a legal INEC-cleared presidential ticket, unchallenged. He has Kwankwaso locked in as running mate and the Kwankwasia northern structure behind him. He has a fully formed campaign agenda. He has a specific one-term offer that is designed to unlock the Southeast's desire for the presidency without alienating the North. And he's operating in an economy where, as Oshomole himself admitted from the APC, insecurity is Tinubu's biggest political threat going into 2027. The man Emeka watched on the television at the petrol station is not running on hope alone this time. He's running on a ticket, a platform, a running mate, and an agenda. Whether that is enough is the question this video is built to answer. Let me walk you through the structural rules that govern whether Peter Obi's 2027 campaign can actually win, because elections in Nigeria are not just about who the people want, they are about who the system allows. Rule 1. The constitutional 25% spread requirement. Section 134 of Nigeria's constitution says that to win the presidency outright, a candidate must win a majority of total votes cast, or if no candidate crosses 50%, win at least 24 of Nigeria's 36 states plus the FCT. In 2023, Obi won 13 states. He did not meet the 25% threshold in enough states to win outright, even if he had finished first. That's the mathematical wall every Obi strategy must climb. The reason Kwankwaso matters is precisely this. His Kwankwasia movement's ground presence in Kano and adjacent northern states is designed to push Obi above 25% in states where he otherwise could not reach that floor. Without Kwankwaso's northern anchor, Obi wins big where he wins, but cannot meet the spread requirement. With Kwankwaso, the spread math becomes achievable. Rule 2. The INEC candidate filing and legal clearance. Obi's NDP ticket is legally clean. He emerged from a non-challenged primary on May 30, 2026. The NDC submitted his candidacy to INEC, and there is no pending court injunction against the party's registration or his candidacy as of August 2026. This is the single most important structural difference between 2027 and the ADC period. In the ADC, the legal instability meant Obi could not be certain his name would be on the ballot. In the NDC, that uncertainty is resolved. He is on the ballot. He is a confirmed candidate. What is left is the campaign. Rule 3. The Electoral Act 2026 and what it changes. The amended Electoral Act now mandates electronic transmission of results to INEC's IREF portal. Result sheets from AC8A are legally admissible as evidence in election tribunals. BVAS biometric accreditation is the law of the land. These provisions, which we broke down in an earlier video, are meaningful structural improvements. For a candidate who has argued publicly that he won the 2023 election and was cheated of the result, these changes reduce but not eliminate the risk of result manipulation at the point where votes are counted and transmitted. The discretionary loophole in Section 63 still exists, but the legal floor for result protection is higher than it was in 2023. Rule 4. The one-term pledge and what it means. Constitutionally, Peter Obi's promise to serve only one 4-year term if elected is not a constitutional provision. It's a political commitment, voluntarily made and not legally enforceable. Its importance is strategic, not constitutional. It is designed to accomplish two things simultaneously. First, it signals to the Southeast that the Igbo presidency question does not require 8 years. 4 years of an Obi presidency will establish the precedent. Second, it signals to Kwankwaso and northern voters that after 4 years, the path opens for a northern candidate in 2031. The one-term pledge is a bargaining chip, not a legal constraint. But in Nigerian politics, publicly made bargaining chips carry enormous weight. Breaking one carries an equally enormous cost. The gray area being exploited by both sides is the NDC's registration date of February 2026, meaning the party has been in legal existence for less than 1 year by the time of the January 2027 election. Any legal challenge to the regularity of the NDC's registration, and such challenges have been made against other parties in Nigerian legal history, could theoretically revisit the question of whether the party conducted valid primaries. So far, no such challenge has succeeded, but the risk is real, and Obi's legal team knows it. That is why the acceptance speech at the convention was designed to be watertight, witnessed, documented, and broadcast nationally. Now, let me follow the money and the power because everything in a presidential campaign eventually comes down to those two things. Start with what Peter Obi is actually offering in 2027 that he could not offer in 2023. In 2023, Obi ran a candidacy built almost entirely on trust, identity, and the emotional power of the obedient movement. His policy positions existed but were not the primary campaign driver. In 2027, he has changed the approach. The July 27th Sunday Politics interview was substantive in a way that 2023 interviews often were not. He talked about raising electricity generation to 10,000 megawatts within 4 years, from a current floor of under 4,000 megawatts. He talked about increasing healthcare spending to at least 10% of GDP and making every ward in Nigeria have a functional primary healthcare center. He talked about agriculture as a path to exceeding oil revenue if properly developed. He talked about deploying intelligence-driven and technology-backed security strategies. These are specific commitments, not slogans. Whether they are deliverable is a separate question, but they represent a campaign that has moved from emotional appeal to policy architecture. The Kwankwaso factor, and why it's more valuable than most commentators acknowledge. In 2023, Kwankwaso delivered 965,000 votes in Kano alone on the NNPP ticket. Kano is Nigeria's second-largest state in population. His Kwankwasia movement has physical ward-level structures in Kano's 44 local government areas, trained agents, community organizers, and a loyalty base built over 15 years. He is not a social media politician, he's a ground-level operator. When Kwankwaso said publicly this week that by God's grace, the next election will be unlike anything that has ever happened in our state and country, especially if I secure the ticket and my name is on the ballot, he was not making an emotional statement. He was describing what his machine can do in Kano and what it can begin to build in adjacent northern states that Obi could not reach alone. The one-term pledge, the political bargain that changes the entire northern calculation.
This is the detail that most political commentary has not fully unpacked. Peter Obi's one-term pledge is not a sign of political weakness, it's a sophisticated political bargain. Here's what it actually says to northern voters. If you vote for Obi in 2027, the South gets 4 years of the presidency, not 8. By 2031, power rotates back. And Kwankwaso, from the northwest, from Kano, has been positioned as the natural successor. So northern voters who follow Kwankwaso are not being asked to give up the presidency to the South forever. They are being asked to give it up for 4 years in exchange for Kwankwaso being the heir apparent for 2031. That's a very different ask from the one Obi made in 2023 when there was no structural northern pact and no clear succession arrangement. The presidency's own aide, Stanley Kocha, acknowledged the power of this arrangement by trying to frame it as shortchanging the South, an argument that reveals how seriously the APC is taking the one-term pledge as an electoral tool. The Northern Outreach Pledge and whether it's working.
Obi made a specific pledge on national television to prioritize northern Nigeria if elected: security, economic development, and unity. Northern Nigeria remains central to the country's stability and economic growth, he said. This is a significant strategic signal. In 2023, the Obi campaign's northern message was largely anti-establishment sentiment and youth energy. In 2027, the message is explicitly policy-directed at the North's specific challenges: insecurity, poverty, unemployment, limited infrastructure. Whether that message reaches voters in Borno, Kebbi, or Sokoto, states where Kwankwaso has limited presence and where APC governors control the state apparatus, is the northern question the campaign has not yet answered convincingly. The three-way race problem and why it is Tinubu's best friend. Here's the tension points that changes how you read this entire story. Obi on NDC, Atiku on ADC, Makinde on APM. That is 3 serious opposition candidates heading into January 2027. In 2023, 4 opposition candidates split 63% of the vote against Tinubu's 37%. If the same split happens in 2027, even with slightly different numbers, Tinubu wins again with a minority of the total vote. The mathematics are not complicated. Obi's path to the presidency requires the opposition vote to consolidate in his direction, not split further. The G100 coalition of prominent Nigerians published an open letter on August 2nd, specifically making this argument. Nigeria cannot be rescued by opposition leaders who march separately toward the same defeat. Personal ambition must submit to national necessity. That letter was published because the consolidation has not happened, and with less than 6 months until election day, the window to make it happen is closing. The silent players, who is quietly backing Obi's campaign that you are not hearing about. The diaspora dimension of Obi's funding and organization is real. The Obedience movement has a structured international presence in the UK, US, and Canada, chapters that have been meeting and planning since the NDC convention in May. Diaspora Nigerians cannot vote from abroad, but they can fund, they can amplify, and they can return home to vote. The 2023 energy that brought people back from London and Houston to queue in Anambra and Lagos is not dead, it is reassessing. The question for the diaspora is the same as Emeka's question at the petrol station. Is this time different? The NDC ticket, the Kwankwaso running mate, the cleared INEC filing, these developments are designed to answer yes. Whether the diaspora responds at 2023 levels is one of the variables that could determine the margin of this election in the Southeast and Lagos. And then there's Tinubu's administration's own vulnerability, articulated most powerfully not by the opposition, but by Oshomole himself, a loyal APC senator. Insecurity, he said, is Tinubu's biggest political challenge heading into 2027. Nigeria moved from 8th to 4th in global terrorism impact assessments between 2022 and 2026, a fact Obi cited in his acceptance speech. The economic pain from the fuel subsidy removal and naira float is real and documented. Cost of living frustration is the daily lived experience of Emeka filling his generator at the petrol station. These are not opposition talking points. They are conditions being acknowledged by Tinubu's own allies, and they are the conditions that Peter Obi has built his entire 2027 campaign around. Now, if what I just laid out surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know your take before we get to the part that changes the whole picture. Let me bring this back to Emeka filling his generator at the petrol station in Nnewi. Emeka does not care about NDC or ADC or Kwankwaso. What he heard on that television was a specific number. Nigeria ranked 4th in the world in terrorism impact in 2026. He heard a specific promise, healthcare spending raised to 10% of GDP. He heard a specific argument, agriculture can generate more revenue than crude oil if properly developed. And he heard a specific commitment, 1 term, 4 years, then I go. What all of this means for Emeka at street level is this. If Obi wins and delivers even half of what he has promised, if electricity generation rises meaningfully, if primary healthcare centers begin to function, if agricultural investment creates jobs in the southeast, the 45 liters of petrol Emeka buys every morning becomes less punishing, not because petrol becomes free, but because he's generating enough income from a more functional economy to absorb the cost. The policy agenda is not about ideology. It is about whether running a printing business in Nnewi becomes less of a daily financial survival exercise. For Nigeria as a whole, the 2027 election around Peter Obi's candidacy raises a question that every citizen, not just Emeka, not just obedient movement supporters, has a stake in. If a candidate who ran on a specific governance platform in 2023 survived 3 years of political disruption, built a legal ticket on his third party, and developed a substantive policy agenda can be defeated in a free and fair election, that is democracy working. If that candidate is defeated by an opposition split that his own side could not resolve, that is democracy being gamed. The outcome for ordinary Nigerians is different depending on which of those two things produces the result. The international dimension of Peter Obi's 2027 campaign is real and has multiple layers. The most striking international fact Obi cited in May 30th acceptance speech is a verified one. Nigeria's global terrorism impact ranking moved from 8th in 2022 to 6th in 2024 and 4th in 2026, according to international terrorism impact assessments. For a country that once provided soldiers to peacekeeping missions across Africa and the world, that deterioration in Nigeria's global security standing is not just a political talking point. It is being noted by foreign investors, international business risk assessors, and multilateral institutions that track governance quality. A Nigeria that ranks 4th in the world for terrorism is a Nigeria where the international business case weakens, where investment decisions are deferred, and where the diaspora considers whether home is becoming too dangerous to return to. The diaspora political dimension is significant for the 2027 race in a specific way. The obedient movement in the UK, the US, and Canada have chapters that have been in active communication since the NDC convention in May. Diaspora fundraising for the campaign infrastructure, legal teams, polling unit agents, logistics is real and ongoing. In 2023, diaspora investment in the Obi campaign was primarily emotional and social media driven. In 2027, with a legally cleared ticket and a structured campaign organization, the diaspora contribution can become more financially substantial. How much money flows from the diaspora into the NDC campaign's operational costs between now and January 2026 will be one of the less reported but more consequential variables in this election. International democracy observer missions are already beginning their pre-election assessments of Nigeria. The EU Observer Mission's post-2023 report recommended electronic transmission mandates and clearer legal frameworks for results management, both of which the 2026 Electoral Act partially addresses. Observers will be watching whether the Act's provisions are implemented as written or circumvented through the Section 60 subsection 3 loophole. If an Obi candidacy that performed credibly in 2023 is defeated in 2027 under circumstances that draw serious observer concern, the international pressure on Nigeria's electoral institutions will be significantly higher than it was after 2023. That is a constraint on how the result is managed, and it is a constraint that the Obi campaign is deliberately keeping in international focus. Let me be direct about the strongest case against Peter Obi's 2027 campaign, because this channel does not deal in one-sided analysis. The three-party problem is the most serious structural obstacle. Atiku on ADC, Obi on NDC, Makinde on APM. That is 3 serious opposition candidates heading into January 2027. The G100 coalition of prominent Nigerians published an open letter on August 2nd, specifically making this argument. Nigeria cannot be rescued by opposition leaders who march separately toward the same defeat. Personal ambition must submit to national necessity. That letter was published because the consolidation has not happened, and with less than 6 months until election day, the window to make it happen is closing. The party stability question has not been answered yet. Labour Party, ADC, NDC, 3 parties in 3 years. The NDC is 3 months old as an active political party as of the election date. It has no governorships, it has no Senate seats, it has no state assembly seats. Its ward structures are being built in real time. The Obedience Movement's own Anambra coordinator warned in May 2026 that Obi risks losing the movement's support, that parliament members elected on the 2023 wave are scoring only 50% in performance. These are not APC talking points. They are internal Obi movement critiques. A candidate on his third party, whose own base is making public accountability demands, is a candidate whose coalition needs careful management, and a campaign that is still building structures while simultaneously running a national campaign is a stretched operation. The strongest APC counter-argument: economic reform takes time.
The Tinubu administration's position, articulated by its economic team, is that the fuel subsidy removal and naira flotation were painful but structurally correct decisions that will deliver results. The IMF and World Bank have both acknowledged that Nigeria's economic reform program is directionally sound, even if the social cost has been severe. Inflation, while still elevated, has been moderated from its peak. Oil production is approaching its 2 million barrel per day target. If the economy shows measurable improvement between now and November 2026, if fuel prices moderate, if more power plants come online, if the food price pressure eases slightly, the pain narrative that Obi is running against becomes weaker, not stronger. Tinubu's best campaign argument is that the worst is behind Nigeria and that changing course now would reset painful progress. But here's where all of those counter-arguments weaken. The economic reform argument requires the improvements to be felt, not just announced. Emeka filling his generator in Nnewi does not read IMF assessments. He calculates 45 liters of petrol, the cost of his daughter's university application, the electricity hours per day his business gets. If those numbers improve visibly by December 2026, the incumbent has a case. If they don't, if the pain persists at current levels while Obi is making specific policy promises on national television, the case for change becomes self-evident, regardless of what the macroeconomic indicators say. The honest summary: Peter Obi's 2027 candidacy is structurally stronger than 2023 in every way that can be measured. Legal clearance, running mate, specific substantive policy agenda, a one-term pledge designed to neutralize the zero-sum northern resistance to a southern presidency. And he's running in an environment where insecurity has worsened, where the economy has not yet delivered visible relief, and where even APC senators are publicly admitting that the incumbent faces real political headwinds.
But politically, the danger that destroyed every previous third-party challenge in Nigerian democratic history since 1999 is still present. The opposition is split. Atiku is running separately. Makinde is running separately. The G100, 100 prominent Nigerians, published an open letter last week saying they cannot be rescued marching separately toward the same defeat. That letter was published because the consolidation has not happened, and if it does not happen, Tinubu wins again. Not because he is more popular than the total opposition, but because the total opposition cannot agree on a single name. Peter Obi is the one man who could seriously threaten Tinubu before 2027. The structural case for that threat is real. The question is whether the people around him, the other opposition leaders, the diaspora networks, the grassroots organizers, and the ordinary voters like Emeka who queued for 2 hours in 2023 can turn that structural case into a political reality before January 16. So I want to hear from you. Do you think Peter Obi has what it takes to win in 2027? And do you think the opposition will finally unite, or will it repeat the same split that handed Tinubu 2023? Drop your answer in the comments and ask someone you know to watch this video before they decide. If this breakdown gave you clarity on what's really going on, do me a favor, share it with one person who needs to understand this. Like the video, subscribe to Naija News Watch, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp.